Good morning. Hopefully, by now, you've had a chance to read the essay by Helen Keller called 3 Days to See. Some of you may have read it before. It is a very, very famous essay. I've had students from Taiwan and China tell me that they'd read it in Chinese originally. That doesn't surprise me because it is one of those great pieces of writing which really makes us think about what it's like to be a human being, what it's like to be alive. As you know by now, Helen Keller had many great challenges. She couldn't see, she couldn't hear, and she couldn't speak. When I think of the way that I communicate and get to know people, get to know my surroundings, get to know anything, it's through seeing and hearing and speaking to a lesser extent. So, what would life be like without any of those abilities? What would our mind be like? What would our hearts be like? We'll probably never know. But writers like Helen Keller can give us insight or understanding of experiences of life that are nothing like our own. The fact that Helen Keller could even put this experience into words and writing for us to read almost 100 years later is a miracle in itself. How did she learn to write? How did she take these thoughts from here without vision, without hearing, and make them so powerful for us? I've read this essay maybe 100 times. So if you've read it once or twice, don't worry about it. Many more times to read it. Every time I read it, I see and think something new. I just want to read a few sections from the beginning of 3 Days to See and talk about them a little bit. I won't read the whole piece because it's very long, but let me get started with a few things I think are important. Here's what she says. Sometimes I have thought that we should live each day as if it were our last. Most of us, however, take life for granted. Take life for granted means that we don't really think about or appreciate all the gifts we have. I think that's true. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, wow, it's wonderful I can see. Isn't it amazing I can hear? I expect to hear, I expect to see. I take it for granted. How different if I was Helen Keller. She says further, I have often thought it would be a blessing if each human being were stricken blind and deaf for a few days. Darkness would make him appreciate sight. Silence would teach him the joys of sound. It is very true that it's not until something is taken away that we really appreciate it. I don't think about seeing, but if tomorrow I couldn't see, I know I would miss it. We don't think about so many things. They're there in our life. We take them for granted, as we say. We take it for granted the sun rises in the morning. We take it for granted that we go to sleep at night. Helen Keller said something really interesting here. Now and then, I have tested my seeing friends to discover what they see. Recently, I was visited by a good friend. She had just returned from a walk in the woods. What did you see? I asked. Nothing in particular, was her reply. How is it possible to walk for an hour and see nothing worthy of note. I cannot see, but I find hundreds of things that interest me. I feel the delicate patterns of a leaf. I pass my hand lovingly about the smooth skin of a birch or the rough bark of pine. In spring, I touch the branches of trees in search of a bud. I feel the velvety texture of a flower. Occasionally, I place my hand on a small tree and feel the happy quiver of a bird in song. At times, I long to see all of these things. If I can get so much pleasure from mere touch, how much more beauty must be revealed by sight. Yet those who have eyes see little. The color and action which fills the world is taken for granted. If I were president of a university, I would set up a course called How to Use Your Eyes. The teacher would show his pupils how they could add joys to their lives by really seeing what passes unnoticed before them. It means there's so many things that we see every day in our life we don't notice. What were your children wearing today? What did your husband, your wife wear today? What did you eat for dinner last night? All the things that are part of our life that pass by quickly. Helen Keller is wondering whether we should pay better attention. And she says here, at the most important, beginning of the important part of the essay, most important part, perhaps I can best illustrate by imagining what I should most like to see if I were given the use of my eyes, say, for just 3 days. And while I'm imagining, suppose you too consider the problem. How would you use your eyes if you only had 3 more days to see? How would you spend those precious days? That's what I want you to think about. I've put an assignment underneath the article on the page. But what I would like you to do is imagine what you would do if you had not 3 days, but just 1 day left to see. What would you do on that 1 day? What would you look at? What would you do with your precious, precious sight on that 1 day? I wish we were in class now and could talk about it. Maybe we'll do a Zoom class sharing all these great ideas. But for now, I'd like you to read the Helen Keller article again. Imagine, as she suggests, that you have 1 day left to see. Write to me about that 1 day. I can't wait to see what you'll do. Take good care. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.